Jace Harrow lived alone on the edge of the old valley, far from the cities, far from the noise. He liked the quiet. After the last war, peace was rare, and he had earned his share of silence. His house was smaller, stone cottage with solar panels. An old barn, and fields that grew wild now. No one visited, no one called. That's how Jace liked it. But on one cold night, the sky broke open. A streak of fire shot across the sky, fast and low. It wasn't a meteor. Jace knew the difference. This thing was controlled. It wobbled, struggling to stay steady, and it was crashing. He stepped out onto the porch and followed the light trail as it fell behind the trees somewhere deep in the forested valley. Then came the sound boom, distant but heavy. The earth trembled under his boots. Jace stood there for a moment watching. The smoke rise from the valley. His heart beat faster. Something had fallen from the stars. I think it wasn't human. He packed quickly: flashlight, medkit, knife, old rifle, and a thick coat. Then he made his way down into the trees. The path was steep and covered in snow, but Jace moved with care. The forest was quiet, too quiet. Even the birds had gone silent. After about an hour, he found the crash. A blackened escape pod lay half buried. In the snow, steam hissing from its sides. The outer shell was scorched, but alien markings still glowed faintly along the surface, blue and silver lines that pulsed like veins. Jay stepped closer, rifle raised. He had seen tech like this during the war, Zalari Empire tech. The hatch hissed open. Smoke poured out, followed by a coughing sound, weak and broken. Then a shape moved inside. Jace froze. A figure stumbled out and fell into the snow. Thin arms, long hair, pale purple skin. It's definitely not human. It was a woman. No, not just any woman, an alien princess. Judging by the glowing crest on her collar and the elegance in her face, even half-dash conscious, she looked up at Jace with wide silver eyes full of pain and fear. "Please," she whispered, her voice soft and shaking. "Water. Warmth." Then she collapsed. Jace stood there for a long moment. Every part of his training told him to walk away. Aliens brought trouble. Zalari were proud, powerful, and dangerous. This one might be a spy or worse, but something inside him refused. He moved fast, wrapping her in his coat. She was cold to the touch, burning with fever beneath icy skin. He carried her in his arms, careful but fast, moving uphill with the strength. He thought he'd forgotten. Back at the cabin, he laid her on his old couch and started the fire. He boiled water, brought out blankets, and hooked up a small translation device from the war days. She was awake now, barely. "Why? Help me," she asked, voice glitching through the translator. Jace didn't answer right away, just knelt beside her and placed a warm cloth on her forehead. "You crashed on Earth," he said. "That makes you my guest." Over the next hours, she drifted in and out of sleep. Her name was Virelia, last daughter of the Zalari royal line. She had been attacked in space, her ship destroyed, her guards killed. The poison in her system was rare, slow, and deadly. Her enemies had wanted her to die quietly. Instead, she landed here, on Earth, in Jace's valley. He gave her soup, made from roots and herbs, and sat beside her while she ate. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled too much. "You are not afraid of me?" she asked. "I've seen worse," Jace said. She looked around the cabin. "This place, it is peaceful." "It was," he said, half smiling. "Then you dropped in." Out a soft laugh. Even that seemed to hurt her. As the days passed, she grew stronger, though the poison still lingered. Jace cleaned the wound on her side, treated the burns, and helped her walk again. He fixed a chair with wheels so she could move to the porch. When the sun came out, they talked, slowly at first. She told him about her world, her people, her fall. He told her about the war, about the noise and the loss. He told her how he stopped fighting because he was tired of killing. One evening, they sat by the fire, sharing silence. "You saved me," Virelia said, voice quiet. "I didn't think, just acted." Jace replied, "But still, I would be Dead if not for you. He didn't answer. Her silver eyes looked at him, soft and full of something he didn't understand. Later that night, she stood outside, staring at the stars. He had seen many things in his life wars, ruins, ships that blotted out the sun, but he never thought he would be part of something like this. An alien princess in his home, strange kindness forming between them. Then he heard her voice behind him. "I've seen many stars," she said, standing with effort. "But your world, it's different." He looked at her. "How?" "It's quiet, pure, I feel safe here." Jace looked back at the stars. "Not for long. If you survived, someone will come looking." She nodded. "Yes, and not to help." Jace clenched his jaw. He had buried his weapons after the war, hoping never to use them again. But maybe peace was never meant to last. Later that night, while Varelia slept, the stars shimmered above, far away, in deep space. A Zellery warship caught a faint signal from a hidden tracker, one attached to her escape pod. The hunter smiled. "The princess lives," he said, and he set course for Earth. The snow melted slowly over the valley. Sunlight returned, soft and golden, but the air still carried the chill of winter. Inside the cabin, the fire burned steady. Dorelia sat near the window, wrapped in thick blankets. Her skin, once pale and cold, now held a faint glow. Her strength was returning, but not completely. The poison still lived inside her, hidden and slow. Jace cooked quietly at the stove eggs. Root bread and bitter tea from mountain herbs. He didn't speak much. He never did. But he had grown used to her presence, and Varelia had grown used. To him, he wasn't like the others she'd met in the galaxy, no. Pride, no fear, no greed in his voice. Just calm, silence, and steady hands. He had carried her from death's door, expecting nothing in return. "Is this how humans care for strangers?" she asked one morning. Jace placed a plate in front of her. "Not all humans, just me." She smiled weakly. "Then I'm glad it was you." Varelia learned to walk again, step by step. Jace built her a wooden cane and guided her around the cabin. She fell often. He always caught her. She laughed at her weakness. He never did. One day she found his old uniform in a chest-worn, dark green, marked with old medals and the name J. Harrow. "You were a soldier." Jace didn't turn to look at her. "Long ago. Why did you stop?" "I got tired of burying friends." She stood in silence, her silver eyes soft. Then she nodded, as if she understood too well. The nights were long in the valley, filled with stars and wind. Varelia often sat on the porch, wrapped in wool, staring up at the sky. Jace joined her sometimes, bringing tea or just quiet company. "Do you miss it?" he asked one night. "Home," she said. "Yes, but not the palace. I miss the sea of stars. The sound of wind on crystal towers. My mother's voice." She looked down at her hands. "They will never let me return." "Why not?" "I carry a crown that others want destroyed. The poison in MIT came from someone inside my own court." Jace didn't speak, but his eyes turned cold. "They feared peace," she continued. "I wanted to stop the wars. I said the fighting had to end. They called me weak. And now they want you dead." Yes, Jace clenched his fists. He hated that kind of story power silencing peace. Now betrayal hidden in smiles. He had seen it in every war. As spring crept closer, so did something else. A signal blinked on a forgotten panel inside her escape pod. Someone had tracked it someone. From the stars, Varelia saw the blinking light and froze. She rushed to Jace. "They found me," she said. Jace followed her to the pod. He stared at the panel, then at the sky. "They're coming," she whispered. "Hunters, they won't stop until I'm dead." "Then we don't wait," Jace said. He turned and walked toward his barn. Inside the barn was a trapdoor beneath the hay. Jace opened it, revealing a bunker full of old equipment things he swore never to use again. Armor, weapons, EMP grenades, motion sensors. He looked at them for a long time. His hands touched the old rifle like greeting an old enemy. Varelia followed him down. "You kept all this?" "I hoped I'd never need it." He lifted a pulse mine from its case and smiled coldly. But I'm glad I did. Over the next days, Jace prepared. He set up traps in the valley, hidden pressure plates, electric snares, cameras. He repaired his old drone and set it to patrol the woods. He cleared paths through the trees and built lookout spots in the cliffs. Virelia helped. Using her knowledge of Zalari technology, her fingers moved quickly over his laptop, reprogramming sensors to detect alien frequencies. She couldn't fight, but she could think. She was still a princess trained to lead, even from the shadows. Jace admired her focus. Even weak, she worked beside him like a warrior. "You could have left me to die," she said one evening. "You didn't die." "No. But why did you help?" Jace thought for a moment. "Because you fell from the sky and asked for help like a person, not a princess," she smiled. "Then let me be a person, just for a while." That night, they sat outside under the stars. Jace brought out an old telescope, dusty and scratched. He pointed it upward. "That one's Mars. Over there, Jupiter." She looked through the lens, eyes wide like a child. "Beautiful. You've seen galaxies. Why does this impress you?" "Because you care about them. On my world, we forget to look." Jace handed her a blanket. "Earth's slow," he said, "but honest." Virelia leaned back and sighed. "I want to live." "You will." He said softly. "No," she whispered. "I can feel the poison spreading. I don't have long." Jace looked at her, the stars reflecting in her silver eyes. "Then we make every moment count." In space, the Zalari hunter ship entered Earth's orbit, cloaked in cold. The bounty leader, Korvik, studied the signal from the pod. "The princess is alive," said. "And someone is protecting her," his second-in-command replied. Korvik growled. "Then we kill them both." He sent 3 drop pods toward Earth fast. Quiet, deadly, their path. Jace's valley back on Earth. Jace's drone picked up heat signatures in the forest. 3 incoming. Not animals. Too fast. He checked the sky and saw dark trails above the clouds. "They're here." Virelia stood, gripping her cane. "Let me face them." "No," Jace said firmly. "You stay hidden. You're the reason they're coming. I'll give them a reason to regret it." She tried to argue, but stopped when she saw his face. This was no longer just a quiet farmer. This was the soldier she had never met before. As the sun set, the first drop pod landed in the trees. Black armored hunters emerged, scanning the area. With alien rifles, Jace waited in the cliffs, hidden behind a tree. When they moved forward, he pressed the trigger. Boom. A trap exploded, tossing one hunter into the air. The others shouted and fired into the trees. Jace rolled to the side, fired twice, and dropped another. "Come on," he muttered. "You wanted to fight?" No, the battle lasted through the night, fast, brutal, silent. Jace used every trick he knew. He led them into traps, flanked them from behind, set off EMP bursts that blinded their tech. The last hunter cornered him near the barn. "You're only human," he growled. Jace aimed his rifle, and that's enough. The hunter fell. Jace returned to the cabin, bruised and tired. Virelia rushed to him, eyes wide. "You won. For now." He sat down, breathing hard. She knelt beside him and touched his face, her hands trembling. "They will send more." "Let them," Jace said. "You're not alone anymore." She leaned into him, resting her head on his shoulder. "You shared your home," she whispered. "Your food, your fire, and now your life." He didn't speak, but his arm wrapped gently around her shoulders. Outside, the stars watched in silence. But in the galaxy beyond, someone had heard the last hunter's final transmission. The princess lives, and a human protects her. And the galaxy began to stir. The next morning, the valley was silent again. Birds slowly returned to the trees. The snow had melted into soft mud, but peace did not return. Jace stood by the burned wreckage of the hunter pod. The alien metal was still hot. The air smelled. Of smoke and war, he had survived. Barely inside the cabin, Varelia sat with a blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes were tired, her skin pale again. The poison had become stronger. Every hour now mattered. Jace brought her tea and sat beside her. "They'll send more," she said. "I know. You can't stop them forever." He looked into the fire. "No, but I can give you time." She shook her head. "You've already given me more than I ever expected." They sat in silence, the sound of the wind whispering through the broken window, far above Earth, in deep orbit. The Zellery hunter's ship floated like a shadow. Corvick, the bounty leader, stood before a star map. His eyes burned with anger. "All 3 ground teams lost," his officer said. "1 human killed them all." "Corvick," growled a farmer. "A soldier. It doesn't matter. You will destroy the entire region." He pressed a button. A large missile bay opened under the ship, but before he could fire, a warning alarm blared. Another ship had entered the system, unidentified, fast, cloaked. Then it spoke. "Stand down."
Ow.
Corvick Orby erased. Corvick's eyes widened. He knew that voice, the House of Orin, once loyal to the princess, had returned, and they were not alone. Back in the valley, Jace fixed the cabin roof. Varelia sat on the porch watching him. "You know," she said softly, "in my home, people would bow when I entered the room." Jace glanced at her. "You want me to bow?" She smiled. "No, I like this better." He stopped hammering. "Do you mean I feel normal here, not royal, just Varelia? A woman, not a crown?" Jace nodded and went back to work. "You've changed me," she said. He looked at her. "I didn't mean to, but you did. You showed me that kindness. Can survive war. That not all humans are monsters." Jace walked over and handed her a tool. "Same goes for aliens." Later that day, a small storm rolled in. Rain fell hard, thunder shaking the sky. Jace lit candles and locked the doors. But he felt something in the air, tension, like the calm before a strike. And he was right. That night, the power went out. The lights died. The fire flickered low. Varelia clutched his arm. "They're here again." He grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. Outside, he saw a shadow stall, fast, moving through the trees, but they didn't attack. Not yet. Instead, a voice echoed from a speaker. "Human, bring out the princess. You've done enough." Jace didn't reply, turned to Varelia. "Go to the basement, lock the door." No, he blinked. "What?" "I won't hide again." She said, "If this is my end, I'll face it." Jace stared at her for a moment. Then he nodded. "Then we do it together." The cabin door flew open. Smoke grenades rolled in. Lights flashed. For new hunters entered, silent, armored, fast. But Jace was ready. He kicked over the table, firing from cover. Varelia dropped to the floor. Crawling behind the couch, one hunter moved toward her, but Jace caught him with a shot to the leg. Another charged. But a trap near the fireplace exploded, throwing him back. Then came the last 2 bigger. Stronger. Jace fought them hand to hand, swinging a metal rod. He took hits, but didn't fall. Finally, with a growl, he smashed the last one into the wall. Smoke filled the cabin. The battle was over. Jace stood bleeding from his forehead. He turned to Varelia. "Are you?" Suddenly his knees buckled, fell. She crawled to him, holding his head. "Jace, no. I'm fine," he muttered. "Just tired." She looked at him, tears in her eyes. "You nearly died. For me," he smiled weakly, "you're worth it." They buried the attackers in the woods. Jace lit a fire to burn the bodies and destroy any tracking signals. Varelia placed a hand on his shoulder. "You saved me again." He didn't reply. Her voice trembled. "If I die, they'll forget me." "No," Jace said firmly. "They won't." She looked at him, confused. "You'll send a message, something they can't ignore." "To who?" "To everyone." That night, Jace carried her to the barn, where her damaged escape pod still rested. Together, they repaired the comms panel. She used what little strength she had to record a message clear, powerful, and full of truth. My name is Virelia of Zelari. I am alive. I was betrayed. I do not want revenge. I want peace. If you hear this, remember me not as a ruler, but as someone who believed in kindness. A human saved my life. That means everything can change. Jace uploaded the message too. Her ship's deep space transmitter. He looked at her one last time before pressing send. Are you ready? He asked. Yes, she said, smiling. How the stars will know. Across the galaxy, satellites and listening posts picked up the message. Some leaders ignored it. Others panicked. But many listened. In the slums of broken planets, rebels gathered around screens. On peaceful moons, teachers played her words in classrooms. In high palaces, quiet nobles watched and wept. A princess had lived with a human, and she still believed in peace. But Virelia was fading. The poison had reached her heart. Jace stayed by her side, holding her hand, speaking softly. You're not alone. Not afraid, she whispered. Not anymore. She touched his cheek. You gave me more life than I ever had in a palace. He squeezed her hand. You gave me back my heart. She closed her eyes, and then with one final breath, the princess was gone. Jace sat beside her, silent for hours. Then he stood. He wrapped her in the royal flag she had brought from the pod silver and blue. With the crest of her house, he placed her inside the escape pod once more, and he launched it into the sky, not as a ship, but as a coffin for a queen. In deep space, the pod floated with a beacon bright and steady, a symbol, a message. Virelia of Zelari had died on Earth, but her story had just begun. The stars were quiet after Virelia's death, but not for long. Her message, broadcast from Earth, moved faster than any fleet. It reached the borders of forgotten empires, rebel moons, and noble houses. It touched both hearts and fears. A princess had survived. A human had protected her. She still believed in peace. That changed everything. On the rebel moon Cirrus 5, holograms of Virelia's message played on every wall. Her voice echoed through crowded streets. The people stopped and listened. She speaks of hope, one rebel leader said. After all this time, she's dead now, another replied. It's too late. No, the first man said. She sent the flame. Now it's ours to carry. On the capital world Zel Prime, the royal court shook with panic. The queen. Mother's advisors begged her to respond. The message is spreading too fast, one said. People are asking questions. Burn all records, she ordered. Erase her name. That traitor is dead, but it was too late. Virelia's voice was alive in every system, and the galaxy was listening. Back on Earth, Jace Harrow lived, quietly in the valley again. But he wasn't the same man. He had loved, lost, and fought again. And now he carried a burden. Virelia's final hope. He sat on the porch, watching the stars every night. He still remembered her smile, her calm voice, the way she stared at Earth like it was a painting. One evening, soft blue light lit the sky. A ship was landing, but it wasn't a hunter. The ship touched down gently behind the barn. It was smaller than the others, sleek and silent. The symbol on its hull was familiar House Orin. It's the last noble house that had remained loyal to Virelia. Jace stood still, was holding his rifle, but didn't aim. The ship's ramp opened. A tall woman with silver skin and green robes stepped out. Her eyes were kind, her voice respectful. You must be Jace Harrow. That depends on who's asking. She smiled. Right. My name is Lyra Orin. I was once Virelia's handmaid. Now I am her witness. Jace lowered the gun. You came too late. I know, she said gently. But her message reached us. We followed her signal. We came for her memory, and for you. Inside the cabin, Lyra looked around. She touched the chair where Virelia used to sit. Her eyes filled with tears. She trusted you, Lyra said. She had no reason to. Yet you gave her life when others gave her death. Jace looked away. She didn't want power, he said. Peace. Just something better. Lyra nodded. Then you must help us now. Come with us. Tell her story. Speak her words. Jace hesitated. I'm not a hero. I'm just a farmer. No, Lyra said. You're the man the galaxy needs to hear. The next morning, Jace stood on a hill, looking at his valley for the last time. He packed only what he needed. Photos, a worn jacket, and a single necklace Virelia's. Left beside the bed the night she died as he stepped aboard the ship, he looked back once more, then the door closed, and Earth became a memory. The ship took him far beyond the moon. Beyond the Sol system, he saw worlds he never imagined. Gas giants with floating cities, crystal planets with glowing forests, space stations the size of continents. But everywhere he went, people knew her name, VR, the lost princess. The voice of peace, the one who loved a human. They brought him to Orion's Gate, the largest neutral station in the galaxy. Their leaders from many systems had gathered rebels, exiles, traitors, even former enemies. Lyra stood beside Jace in the grand hall. The crowd was restless, watching him. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. My name is Jace Harrow, he said. I lived alone until she crashed into my valley. He paused. She didn't ask for war. She didn't beg for pity. She just wanted to live. She taught me more in a few weeks than I learned in years. He looked around the hall. She died in my arms. But she died believing in something better. He pointed to the screen behind him, where her message played once again. That voice, it's real, and I will carry it as long as I breathe. The room was silent. Then slowly, applause began. It spread. Faster, louder. People stood. Some wept. Some raised their fists. Hope had returned. Across the galaxy, things began to change. Rebel factions united for the first time. Neutral planets declared support for Virelia's dream. Old houses swore loyalty again to the true line, and everywhere. Her face appeared not as a queen, but as a symbol. She had fallen on Earth, and Earth had risen with her. Jack traveled from world to world, sharing her story. On the frozen world of Thallon, he lit a lantern at the Peace Shrine on the red sands. Of Vector 9, he planted a tree in her name on the crystal towers of Orcs. He met orphans who memorized her words. Each time, people thanked him not for saving her life, but for honoring it. But not all were happy. The false royals of Zelprim declared him a liar. Bounty hunters returned, this time with sharper tools and deadlier goals. But Jace was no longer alone. Lyra and her people protected him, and more allies rose each day. One night, in orbit over a quiet world, Jace stood at the window of his cabin aboard the ship. Lyra joined. Him, she would be proud, she said. Jace didn't answer for a while. She deserved more time. He finally whispered. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. She lives in every world now. In every voice that says no to war. Jace closed his eyes. She saved me first, he said. I only returned the favor. Back on Earth, the valley remained still. But at the top of the hill, near the barn, a small beacon now glowed. It marked the place where she had lived and died. And above it, a small message floated in light. Here fell the princess of the stars. Here rose the man who would carry her dream. Years passed, but the name Virelia did not fade. In fact, it grew brighter like a star no longer hidden by clouds. And beside her memory stood Jace Harrow, the man from Earth, the one who had protected a dying princess, not for power, not for famed, because it was right. He never called himself a hero, but the galaxy did. On the planet Veltira, children carved her name into the white stones of mountain shrines. On Cirrus V, former rebels built a hall called the House of Peace, and in its center was a statue of her standing tall. Hand outstretched, and beside her statue always was second figure, a human man, strong, quiet. Holding her hand, Jace traveled world after world, speaking less now. His words were few, but they carried weight. He didn't preach. He told stories. He told them how she smiled when she first saw the moon, how she used his old telescope to study Earth's stars, how she said, "If I must die, let it be where kindness lives." And every time he told that story, someone in the crowd wept, not for her death, but for her dream. Peace grew from that dream. Not all at once, but slowly. A council was formed, the Celestial Accord. It had humans, Zelari, dozens of other species working together. Old enemies now sat at the same table. Armies were reduced. Trade opened. Even music. Art and learning spread across systems once filled only with war, and at the heart of it all, her story remained. One day Lyra Oren stood with Jace on the garden moon of Cerelia, where the council gathered. "This was her dream," Lyra said softly. "And yours." Jace didn't reply at first. He watched the sky. "I only helped carry it," he said. "She chose well," Lyra said. "Of all the beings in the stars, she chose a human." He looked at her. "No," he said quietly. "She chose me." But Jace was growing older. Humans didn't live as long as Zelari. His hands weren't as steady anymore. His hair turned silver. His eyes held more past than future. Still, he continued. He knew his time was short, and he had one last promise to keep. He returned to Earth, not in silence, but with honor. The council ship landed near the valley where it all began. Jace stepped down slowly. The air was the same. The trees a bit taller. The barn half gone now, but the hilltop memorial was still there. He walked to it alone and sat. The beacon still glowed softly. He reached into his coat and pulled out the last thing he had kept hidden. A crown, not gold, not heavy, just a simple circlet of woven silver vines, something Varelia. Once made from scrap wires and flowers during her short days on Earth. "You should wear it," she had once joked. He never did until now. Jace placed it on the stone beside her name. "You don't need it anymore," he whispered. "The galaxy already knows who you are." He looked up at the stars, and now, maybe it knows me too. That night, under the moonlight, Jace fell asleep beside the memorial, and he did not wake, but he was not forgotten. A week later, the council held a great gathering. Every major system. Not for war, but for a funeral. The man who carried her. The man who carried her. Dream had passed, and the stars themselves paused to remember. On the capital station, a grand chamber was built. Inside stood two statues, side by side. One of Varelia, eyes forward, hand open, and one of Jace Harrow holding her hand, eyes calm. Below them, written in every language, she dreamed of peace. He answered with action. Together, they changed the stars. And in classrooms, young aliens learned of the human farmer who took in a dying princess, of the man who faced hunters alone in the snow, of the one who said, "You're not my enemy, you're my guest." They learned that courage is not only found in battle, but in kindness, in choices, in sacrifice. Jace is not a king, but he became more. He became a legend, not for weapons, but for heart, and somewhere, in the quiet beyond stars, some say the two souls met again, not as soldier and princess, not as human and alien, but as two lights. Side by side, watching over the galaxy, they helped heal. And so the story ends. Not in sorrow, but in flame. A flame that still burns. A flame called hope.